Hello everyone. Today I'm going to start the assembly of the motor for my 86 C10, the square body truck. It's originally a 5.3 that came out of a 99 GMC Sierra pickup. I got the motor, transmission, wiring harness out of it. Then I disassembled it, took it to the machine shop. I had it bored out to a 5.7. So now it'll be a 5.7 instead of a 5.3. I just had to put bigger pistons in it. And I've been ordering parts for it and gathering stuff up, and I just about have everything I need to put it together now, but we're going to start putting it together today by installing the crankshaft. The crankshaft is a stock crankshaft. Had it in the machine shop. Had to turn it, I think, 10 on the mains and nothing on the rods, and it had cosmoline on it, rust inhibitor. So I got all that off today, cleaned it all off. I ran a brush through all of the oil imports from the crank journals to the rod journals all the way through. I've done that. Wiped it down with a lint-free cloth, so it should be ready to go in. And of course there's my bearings and caps and tools and whatever. So I'm going to start the process of putting it together now. And you have to bear with me. This is the first time I've built a LS motor bottom end. So the first thing I have to do is put the bearings in the block. You have to put the bearings in. You have the holes in it right here, which is for the oiling. And you see right here in the block, you have oil imports for it, but this comes in from the crankshaft, or I mean camshaft. Actually, it comes from the oil imports. But anyhow, you got to have the oil coming through these holes, so you got to have the holes in the bearing lined up with the holes in the block. So you just slide these in, try to get them even on both sides. The center one is a thrust bearing. On the small blocks it's on the back, but on the LS's it's the center one. And I've cleaned everything before I started putting it together here. I cleaned everything down real good, make sure there wasn't no dirt, debris, sand, whatever on it. So hopefully we should be good. What we're going to do, we're going to check that with plastic gauge. We're going to check the clearances on it. So I'm not going to put assembly lube on it right now to install the crank. I'm just going to put the crank in, everything dry. We'll put the plastic gauge in and we will check the clearances on it. And try to put it in where the lubrication hose ain't up at the top, because that's where I'm going to put my plastic gauge, so they're good to go. You just put a little line of plastic gauge all the way across the journal. If you don't know what plastic gauge is, it's just a piece of plastic that's round, and when you put it between two metal surfaces and clamp down on it, it spreads out. Well, depending on how far it spreads out is how much clearance you have. So on these motors you're supposed to have anywhere from 7/10 of a thousandths to 2.1 thousandths, I believe is what the number is. Might be 8/10 of a thousandths to 2.1 thousandths. A little tighter than what I'm used to on the small blocks. And normally we like to have around 2.5, depends on what you're doing with them. Anyhow, that little piece of green strip across the journal right there, did it on all the main bearings. So that's what the plastic gauge is. So we're going to put the main caps on it, torque them down, and then we will check the clearances on the bearings. And you do that by using this piece of paper that comes with the, I don't know if you can see it, but the real, if it's that wide, the green, that's 1/1000. The next white is 1.5 thousandths. The next green, if it's that wide, is 2 thousandths, and if it's the small white one on the bottom there, that's 3 thousandths clearance. So that's what we're going to be checking. You put the bearings in the caps. You got to make sure there's a little notch right up here, and the bearing has a little notch in it right there that fits in that. or has a tab if it's in the notch, I should say. So make sure all those are lined up. Now, the way I'm just snugging these down, that's the actual torque sequence that when you do tighten them, when you torque them down. That's the torque sequence you have to do it in. I'm going to have to get a wrench, put on here, and pull these caps down. Right now they're all kind of flush with the top. They're supposed to be recessed a little bit. I don't know if you can see there's a gap. They're probably like 3/16 to 1/4 inch being all the way down. But you don't want to pull them down really tight because the first torque spec on them is only 15 pounds, so you don't want to really torque on them to get them down, or your readings will be off when you go to torque it. Down. You see them going down. I'm going to pull them like that. Now it's recessed in there, not flush like the others are. Side to side till you get it all the way down. Don't want to pull it down crooked. Definitely don't want to torque it. Once you get there, you just hit the bottom, you know you're there. So the first torque on the inner bolts, well, inner bolts and outer bolts are both 15 pounds for right now. And then on the inner bolts you go 80 degrees from there, and the outer bolts I think it's 51. I'll have to check the book, make sure. So there's 15. It's not much. Here's the part I really don't like. These torque to yield bolts. You have to put it on there, get all the slop out of it, set your dial to 0. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I got it set on 0. Then I got to turn it around till it reads 80 degrees. Get her in there where I can see where it's at. So here we go. That is not right. Everything is moving.
Eventually.
Here's the problem. Gauge that shows me how many degrees I'm going after I torque it to 15 foot-pounds isn't working correctly. So therefore I'm not getting a good reading on my torque. That's one of the reasons I hate these bolts. I could try to guess and go 80 degrees from here. So that's 90, so I mean, I'd just be guessing. I really don't want to do that. So I might have to wait and get me a better gauge or figure out what's wrong with that one before I torque these things down. This obviously isn't a very good one, so I'm going to have to get back with you on that. So I'm going to shut off the video for tonight, and we'll catch up when I get a new gauge.
The next day.
Hello everybody. So today I'm going to start off where I left off yesterday, but I went and got me a torque wrench. I did a little research. They sell torque wrenches that will torque and also do the degrees. So I went and bought me one because I didn't trust that little gauge I had, and I've got quite a bit of money tied up in this motor, so I really don't want to, ruin it with a $15 gauge. So I went and bought me a torque wrench. It'll torque. So I've loosened everything up. We'll retorque these to 15 foot-pounds, and then I will turn around and put the 80 degrees on the inside ones and 51 degrees on the outside bolts. So let's get started. Alright, so I've already preset the torque wrench to the 15 foot-pounds, and we will start torquing. This one here has audible alarm and lights when it gets to close to where it needs to be. It's close, there it is. Red light comes on when it's at your set point, which is 15 foot-pounds. There. Alright, so I got all those set to 15 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to switch to the 80 degree right there. I'm going to start doing the inside ones and doing it 80 degrees. It shows you how many degrees it's going. The same thing, it'll give you auto alarm. There it is. Alright, so I got them all torqued now. Now we're going to release them, undo the caps, check our plastic gauge in there. I'll show you what we're doing here. I'm checking the plastic gauge on the bearings and showing you what I'm talking about when I'm reading it here. So there's the plastic gauge on there. So all you do is you match it up with the line on the, so it's not quite 2 thousandths, it's right at 1 thousandths and a half clearance, which is okay. Or not okay, it's good. It's within range. All of them are within range. I've already checked them all. So now I got to clean the plastic gauge off the crankshaft and the bearings, and then we'll put it back together for the final assembly. I'm not going to record all that, but when I go to put the caps back on, I'll start recording again. Alright, now I've cleaned the bearings off, the mating surfaces for the bearing caps. I cleaned the bearings on the caps and the caps themselves, and I almost forgot to record this, but I'm putting assembly lube on all the bearings. Then we'll set the crankshaft in place. Put some more assembly lube on the crankshaft. I'll start putting the main caps on for the final time. I'm going to coat the thrust bearing sides. I did it to the bearing that was in there before I put it in. I've already coated the bolts, the threads on them, and underneath the head, so we get an accurate torque reading on it. Again, we'll run these all down by hand with a small wrench. Alright, so now we're back to our 15 foot-pounds on the inner bolts, so here we go. Alright, before I do the final torque on those, take a dead blow, hit it on the front and the back to seat the thrust bearing. Still rotates, that's good. So now we can do our final torque, which will be 80 degrees on the insides. Alright, now we change it to 51 for the outer ones. Alright, so tap it again, make sure it rotates. Rotates great. And I can put the side bolts in for the main caps. I bought new ones of those because they have a sealing compound on them. So pretty much you use them one time and they're done. Alright, so there we have it. Crankshaft is in. Next thing will be the pistons, so that'll be coming up soon. Alright, I don't know if you can see this or not. Checking the end play on the crankshaft. You're allowed 1.5 to 7.9 thousandths. So got that one set on 0. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's 2 thousandths, which is on the tight side, but it is acceptable. Alright, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to check the ring gap on my rings. I've already done it, but I'm going to just to show everybody how to do it. Set your ring in your bore. Use the piston to push it down to make sure it's good and square in the bore. Then you use your feeler gauge. In the book it says between 10 and 20 ring gap is for a stock, so I've already checked it. I can get a 15 in there barely, and a 16 will not go in, so I've got a 15 thousandths ring gap. Like I said, I've already checked all the compression rings. They're acceptable, so we're going to ride with it. So we're going to put them on the pistons and start installing pistons. Alright, what I'm doing now, I'm putting the piston rings on. So I'm using the guide in my book to put them on correctly. It says front of engine that way. You can tell that by the notch in the piston. Put your expander ring on. Goes in the bottom groove. Put it together like that. It goes in 730 position or something like that. And then I'm gonna put the top one on first of the ring that goes above the expander. Alright, so that's on. But now the gap's in the wrong spot, so I'm gonna rotate it around. It should be around 1030 position. Gap is there. Don't go too far with that one. That's on. That one's correct. Now we put the lower one on, and it goes over on this corner. There's those two. So we got all the oil ring, not the oil ring, the expander ring and retainers on. And the next one is the number 2. It's got a little lip for it's a wool wiper. Got a dot on the top of it somewhere. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there. Kind of hard to tell on this light. And it goes the same space, or the same spot the expander comes on. So it's over here like this. Put this one on. There, and then the upper ring goes just the opposite, so it goes over in this corner. And that's pretty much the rings right there, so we got them all on. I'm going to do that to all 8 pistons, and then we'll start installing them.